Friends, hello, welcome back. The Omnibus breakdowns continue here on the John's Comics with Kids YouTube channel. We've been talking about, of course, the New Mutants on Tuesdays. We just did the Doom Omnibus Thursday, so it's time to continue. Let's continue the glory of Marvel. Tonight is all about Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev's Daredevil, and I'm very excited to get into this. I will say, the gentleman coming on the show tonight, he burned a major bridge last night. If you guys missed it, he did not emphatically call The Little Bird the greatest book of all time. He called it just really, really good. And I really think he might have burned that bridge with White Whale Comics, and he's potentially going to burn a bridge tonight. I don't know what's going to happen. We have not talked if he likes this at all. I have forced this upon him in many regards, but let's just see if JP is going to burn another bridge.
Where's mine? Oh, wait, no, sorry.
I can't believe Alec is still. I mean, I'm really worried for Dungeons and Dragons next time around, because he may just try to kill us all because you didn't
right at the end. So maybe it just means he's just going to kill us. Because
I mean, I was hoping you would at least just
okay
fall on the. I wanted you to dive on the grenade for all of us, is what I'm saying. Like you really could have put him in a great mood and just said,
I could have.
It's the greatest of all time.
I got to be honest, John. I can't, I did really enjoy it, but it was, it's not,
no,
it didn't change my life. I'm sorry.
Like all comics are supposed to do.
There's been a few that's like, oh my gosh, that's great. But, Bird wasn't quite that for me, but, we all can't be as smart as Alec. So, it's just my dumb showing through. It's fine.
Anyone that doesn't know JP, the links are all down below, but you've been one of the greatest friends I've met in this community, and I really do appreciate all the time you're willing to share with me and my shenanigans. The indie show, the indie show hangouts of all, we went through the entire run of Fables, and it was so much fun revisiting that.
To go back. They've written more since we finished it.
It's true. You got to call the band back together, right?
Yeah.
And then now we're doing 100 Bullets, which again is another one of those Vertigo books that really got me back into collecting. So it's been kind of fun to go through all this.
You mean this tiny book that you have me reading?
I was also on several of the Kavi and JP, was it Gotham Chronicles, right?
City Chronicles that we did over the years, yeah. I need to go back through and find my list, because you did your Batman list, and there's a couple that are that I think you're missing. And I need to go. I'm trying to remember exactly where I placed everything. So
I love it.
Because I
need more recommendations.
We ended up doing 29 different stories. So
that shelf I've got is very packed. It's very tight. I'm gonna have to move some things around if I add more Batman to that shelf. Gore Vidal is also lighting some fires tonight. Enjoyed it, but sold his copies. Oh, now I bet Alec bought them. He doesn't let people have them in the wild. Let's say hello to some friends. JP, first commenter in the chat. Tailgating, slacking. It's because I don't usually go live on a Friday, so I think my usual audience is watching. There's a ton of. I told JP before we went live, I'm cheating on him because there's an auction happening right here on my cell phone.
He's not even giving me his full attention. So.
No, the bare minimum, as they say in social. This is my friend Callie Comics is going and doing an auction with a bunch of friends like Bleecker and Papa Wheelie, and they're doing auctions to support the upcoming con season for them all. So I'm kind of watching it and bidding on stuff on the sly. So that's my distractibility tonight. But there's a lot of good content going on around tonight. Cliff was live with my man Joel the Geek a little earlier. They were doing a great live stream. So lots of good stuff. I understand if the audience is a little diluted going on tonight.
Yeah. And I know there's a bunch of people at the con I normally go to, but not because I can't walk around at a con yet. So.
Yeah. How's the boot? How's it going with the boot?
Well, we're down to a shoe. So we're down from it's basically the same thing as the boot on the bottom, but it's only it's like a sandal and not up to my calf. So
soft. You're doing soft shoe.
Well, no, it's hard. It's got a hard bottom on it, but
okay.
It could be a tattoo. So
Boswell in the chat, who gifted me a comic that I'm going to unveil tomorrow on the Saturday show. Huge thank you, Rob, for the book that you sent me, because it's perfect for me. Perfect. We got Ruben Guzman in the chat. Yes, this is an evening for Murdoch. So if you are enjoying the television series, or if you're a Daredevil fan, or if you want to become a Daredevil fan, hopefully we'll get you some information tonight. We got Kenneth Bird in the chat. What's going on, Kenneth? And Gore says he's surprised JP hasn't read this Daredevil run, but I think that's part and parcel with kind of where we wanted to begin the show tonight, which is JP really, other than the television series, and maybe when he would pop in and out of other books you've maybe read, you've never really read any Daredevil before.
I've read no Daredevil, like other than like if he shows up in Spider-Man, right, or maybe like or some other Marvel book that I happen to be reading. That is my only Daredevil reading. Now, just from being in like comic community, even before the show came out, I knew the basics of the character, right?
Okay.
And by basics, I really mean the broad scope details of the Miller run. Okay. Elektra, Bullseye, Kingpin, like those kind
Foggy
of broad
Nelson
brushes.
You've heard of Foggy and Karen, and
yeah, I know who
some
Foggy,
of the basic.
I knew who Foggy and Karen were before the show started. I knew who, I know who Elektra is. I know the basics of the history of there. I know that at some point Kingpin found out who he was, and like I know those big broad brushes.
Okay.
So, but I never dove into the character. I never read any of it. So, if anyone's like, and you started with Bendis, you blame that guy there.
Which I guess brings us to like the topic at hand, right? Which was like JP saying like, what would you pick as a starting point? And I've really struggled with this over the years, because obviously I love the Miller run. I have there's 2 omnibus for that era of Daredevil, and I've got both. And I love Born Again. I've got many different collected editions and all the singles and everything. But for me, for the longest time, as much as I love it, to the point you guys were making last night on your Little Bird live stream, it's not what I would recommend a new person to read, right? It's not what I would tell somebody to pick up first. And I think an appreciation of the character only makes Born Again work better. And it only makes the Miller run, as Gore calls it, foundational, right? And I think, kind of like I wouldn't recommend to a first-time Batman reader to read The Dark Knight Returns as their first read, because it's kind of this Elseworld, look at the future, here's Batman now kind of a thing. It's not something that's a good starting point. But here's the challenge. What is the Daredevil starting point? The wait a second, who's this?
This is Ivy.
Do I know Ivy?
This is Ivy's first appearance on.
What?
He's only been in my house for not even a week yet.
Oh my gosh!
So Ivy is a bit of a rescue. She needed a new place, and I had been without a pet since last summer.
Oh my goodness!
And been without a cat for almost 2 years. And
the show is now canceled, folks. We are going to cat talk. We are not talking about Daredevil. We're canceling everything at this point. It's
so my previous cat was called Harley. This is Ivy,
right?
So
I love that. How do you because she's a rescue? Do they know?
Won't make any more appearances. I had to pick her up. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, I'm very happy for you.
Yes.
Do you know her age at all? Is she a rescue completely? Like nobody knows? About a year.
She was last spring. So yeah.
Oh well, that's my bucket fill for the week, my guy. I appreciate that. What is up, Derek? Thank you for coming by. I appreciate you, sir. Gore says he would recommend Born Again first, and I think I can understand that, Gore. But for me, the more I've gone back and read this volume, which is essentially volume 2 of Daredevil, because it technically starts with Quesada and Kevin Smith, and then segues into David Mack, and then becomes Bendis and Maleev.
Right.
For me, volume 2 feels like an easier jumping on point, but we'll find out, because JP was the test subject for this query, right? And how well he feels like he could as a casual Daredevil fan, having seen the show and caught him in an Avengers book here or there or what have you, or watched him beat up Sabretooth in the Mutant Massacre, at least you feel like how we'll find out. Actually, let's start with that question. How do you feel as an entry level point? How did this work for you as someone not necessarily grading it on the quality of the book, but on the ability for you to dive into it?
Well, it was interesting because, like I said, I had this basic knowledge of the character and the history. But really, after I read this and I thought about it, my basic knowledge of the character and the history was, like I said, things that people just know about the Miller Run that are just like broad knowledge.
Sure.
And so this was an interesting place to start. The first 3 issues were not really about him. It was about Van Urich and this boy. And then we dive in, and then the first couple pages of when you actually start to get into a Daredevil story, the Kingpin appears to die. And the first 2 pages. And it's like, okay. So it was not what I was necessarily expecting. We meet Mila in this, and I had no idea she existed. That was not a character I didn't know anything about. So this is like 20 years old, and it's like, oh, this is all stuff I have no idea what's going on. So from that standpoint,
uneven footing then.
I enjoyed it as a jumping on point in the fact that, okay, this is the character. I recognize the character in the world, but this is a very different time and place, and I'm getting something that's new to me to learn about Matt as a character.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, I think it actually worked pretty well. I will say the way, and we'll get into it, they use what happens apparently in the Kevin Smith run at the beginning of this as one of the driving factors by some of the decisions he makes. I do want to go back and now read that.
Sure.
Just because there's clearly some Bendis is picking up on some the events there are driving some of what he's doing.
Right.
So from that standpoint, although I don't know that I necessarily needed to read it first, but I do want to read it now.
And I think David Mack in his work with Echo plays in a little as well, because there's, I think, 3 different time jumps across the Bendis era where Mack comes in and gives short stories and tells more to the Echo story. And I think all of it fits into one little hardcover.
Because even when you see Kingpin, he's blind. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Which is why they're taking him out. And so there's all this. So there are these things. It's like, okay, this is what I know turned sideways when I'm jumping in. So from that standpoint, I thought it worked well for me, because just reading what I already knew, actually reading the details is something I want to do, but I don't know that I think this in some ways is more satisfying for me because it was something totally new. In terms of the mythos and story.
So then you couldn't predict it in any way.
I couldn't predict it. I didn't know where it was going.
Nice.
That's it doesn't mean pleasant. I don't want to read those others, but as a starting point, it was a way to detach from what I knew and just read the story.
Sure. That's good to hear, at least. And yeah, Gore, I think you're right. This era, especially as it moves into the Brubaker run, which follows it right after, is a crime drama. There's and I do think the best Daredevil stories I think they are this sort of noir, street level, gritty kind of thing that fits into the style of somebody like Brubaker and Bendis in a lot of ways, and kind of fits into the artwork of a Maleev or a Michael Lark, who's the artist who follows after. I think in that way, some of that kind of suits it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk artwork real quick. So I don't know how much Maleev work you'd seen prior to this.
I don't think I've read a book with Maleev as the artist before.
What were your feelings on the art overall? How did you feel about how he captured Daredevil's world? Because then I guess for you it'll be kind of like this is the original view you have of Hell's Kitchen.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, to a degree. I really enjoyed it. It is. I think his style really fits well with what the crime noir feel of what's going on particularly when you get into the main run. When you get past those first 3 issues and you get into like what's going on with the Kingpin and
right.
And you get into the crime aspect of it and the FBI agents and clandestine meetings and like, and I think I realized how much I was enjoying it because when you get to the few issues that he doesn't do or the few pages that he doesn't do occasionally inside an issue, it's like, oh, whoa, what is this? And I mean, I love how like his style is very unique in the fact that like the panel and the art itself, like he just makes it look dirty. Like it's just like there's blotches like all in the background. It's like this fuzzy, like you're watching this on an old school TV that's got static as you're watching it kind of thing. And so like even like, and this is just a random page, but like you get like the Kingpin here and you get all the grain on his face. It's like granular and dirty, and it's so I really enjoyed his style. I thought it worked really, really well for this page, but then you'll get like you'll turn the page and it's like this, and it's like, what the hell?
And that's intentional, right? Because that sequence is having him think back to other battles with Kingpin across time and kind of
because you can see it like slowly gets more cartoony and then slowly fades back to like his style.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, good. Well, then let's from here on out, gang. What we're gonna do is kind of go story by story, plot by plot through this omnibus. It has several storylines, and some we might spend more time on, and some we might breeze through. You had mentioned the very first story arc is Daredevil Light, and it really is an interesting way for Bendis to dive into the universe. The idea that he tells a story from the perspective of ace reporter Ben Urich of the what is he working for at this point? Is he working for the is he working for Jay?
He's still working.
Okay, he's working for Jay Jonah. And he's covering the city beat, but at the same time, as always is the case with Ben, he gets sort of caught with it by a squirrel, and in this case, the squirrel that distracts him is a super villain who has gone missing, named Leapfrog, whose son is sort of semi-catatonic and kind of not really able to explain what happened on the night his dad disappeared. And Ben is wrapped up in trying to peel this onion of this kid to understand what's going on. And mom is in a very distraught place. She never really loved the Leapfrog. It's clear that they had a very tumultuous marriage and things were not great. But the fact that he just vanished without a trace is definitely distressing for her. Meanwhile, Matt is kind of a ghost in this. And every time Ben tries to go to the office and get him, we get a different temp secretary who's basically saying he's in court. He's in court. He's in court. Yeah.
He's in court. He's always in court.
Yes, always in court.
He's in court.
and Ben is just trying to make this work. Meanwhile, Jay Jonah is forcing him to publish different articles, write different articles. He doesn't want to hear about a stupid kid and a missing supervillain.
Yeah, so supposedly the trial of the Kingpin is going on during this, which I assume we're getting in the Matt portion of this run, because we don't really get it when it comes back to it later. Like it's clearly wrapped up, but there's like the trial of the century kind of thing.
I don't remember what Kevin Smith was doing with that plot line.
Well, this Matt would have been around this on both sides of this. So so it's just so that's something. There's just something. Like I said, I'd like to go back and read the Smith and Mac stuff just to kind of fill in a few of the gaps.
Sure. Because this what was issue number? The first Bendis issue is 16. So obviously there's 15 issues. 19,
and then he doesn't come back till 26. So there's 6 issues from where this ends before he picks back up. So and obviously 15 issues before he started on this volume 2. So
right. So then I guess my question to you, and I will tell you my perspective on it. I really like this little like prelude story because it's not focused on Daredevil. It's almost like a Gotham Central issue where it's like focusing on the periphery characters and giving them a chance to have a little story. And Batman, or in this case Daredevil, is this ghost figure kind of lurking over the plot a little bit here. And it's an intriguing little way to start this run. What are your thoughts on this this plot line? That's like a 4-issue story.
As my first literally Daredevil story that I've ever Daredevil focused story I've ever read, I actually thought it worked kind of as an introduction because you're getting sort of the world's perspective on Matt and Daredevil through Ben. And you're getting what is his place in this world? What is he? How is he seen by other people and the wider view about the impact he has? And also his view, how this kid sees him. And so, and then when you finally do get to Ben talking to Matt, it's interesting, you finally get his perspective on what happened and him not necessarily knowing exactly. And eventually you get to the scene where Matt goes and talks to the kid to try to finish filling in all the blanks. And it's, so I think it's actually an effective and it's an interesting way to start the Daredevil journey because it is giving you, this isn't, okay, Matt, and he's super focused on what I got to do. And it's okay, this is where Matt's place is.
Right.
And how he fits and how he affects people. And the impact that having a guy like Daredevil and having villains like this have on the surrounding, which they don't do a ton of in the big two.
Yeah.
And, I think whenever they do, and it's done by good writers and stuff, they can be some of the most powerful and effective stories when they really focus on the collateral of living in a world like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's Hell's Kitchen is such a tiny area, and everything seems interconnected. Matt's business, his superhero life, the heroes and villains and citizens of that region, everything is so intertwined. It's not like they're the Avengers covering the globe, right? Where they're disconnected from the people they're protecting. Yes. He's in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no, I thought it was a, obviously a tragic, but I think at least based on this volume, everything that Matt does is tragedy in some way, shape, or form.
I think, and this is what I think Gore would say is the beauty and tragedy of him being a Catholic, right? It's like his Catholicism is so entwined with his worldview, and then therefore so entwined with the comic as a rule that everything seems so overwhelming and overpowering and exhausting and difficult. And I think it's part of the Catholicism side of the character, which I find fascinating. Gore mentions this run was taking the baton from Miller, who made it a crime drama, and importantly, from added heart for Matt, a bleeding heart. Mac, Maleev, and Lark are obviously influenced by Miller and Sienkiewicz. Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. It's hard not to be. And in the same way that I think, Dark Knight Returns in year one have really changed the trajectory of Batman, and he hasn't really ever been able to be different after that.
Yeah. Well, and to Gore's point, and I don't know if you have this and I doubt it, and because you have collected editions instead of the Omnis, but the intro is written by Klaus Janson to this. There's an intro, and he talks about, you feel like characters, when you work on a character, you feel like they belong to you. And he talks about this Bendis run and the tone and stuff and set. And he even talks about a sequence when we get into the first real story where Matt is looking for someone and that you see Bullseye in the crowd and whether or not he's there and how effectively they do it. And he's they took the baton in a way that, he's I'm so protective. And it was oh no, these guys get it. And it was an interesting little
I'll have to look for
but
that.
If Daredevil has to be written and drawn by someone else, it's good to see him in the hands of these two enormously talented people. He talks about how they took what they had done and built on it in a way that he loved and
respected their work.
Yeah, and respected. Sure. And so
I've considered getting omnis of this for I guess the other side of the coin from you to me is I started with these great collected editions.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
I've read the Daylight. There's 3 of these to the 2 Omnis.
What'll be 2 Omnis, yeah.
And I've then since gone. I've read these probably 3 times. I've since then collected the entire Bendis era in single issues. So I've got all that.
Some amazing Alex Maleev covers during that whole run.
Which is part of it. I mean, certainly the one that I used for this thumbnail where he's sitting on the throne is my favorite. But there's so many great ones that I've just basically gone and made that a priority. And I haven't for sure decided if I'm going to continue through Bendis and Wade and the single issues yet, because I don't know if I have the space for it. But yeah.
I will say, while we're still on this story, this is the one story that Mac does in this Omni. Like, he does that arc, and I think it works really good for this, like the way this is portrayed, and this kid and his fractured like view on things, and how Uric is trying to put this together, and. Like, I really do love the Mac art here. Although I think the Maleev actually works better once we get into the crime noir stuff. But for this psychological thing, I really do love the way Mac handles the art for these issues. I mean, this this page with the drawings and the kids.
Oh, the kid, all the kids' artwork,
the kids' artwork, and Ben trying to figure out what actually happened from this.
Yeah, because it's all, the kid's perspective is kind of guiding both Ben's side of it, and then later when Daredevil talks to him, it's guiding that conversation in a lot of ways. So let's get to the reveal, I guess, because the end when Daredevil sits with the kid, the reveal is that Daredevil fought with the Leapfrog character, came and followed him back to his apartment. And then tragedy occurred when they were battling one another, and Daredevil was basically down and out. And in the midst of all of this,
the kid comes up, and Matt gets distracted by the kid, and Leapfrog uses it to basically knock him out.
Yeah, and then beat on him in such a way that it is reminding the kid of how Dad beats him, and it all kind of culminates in the kid basically electric shocking the dad, and. He falls out a window into a passing dump truck that's going by, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And when Daredevil comes, and when Daredevil comes to, he can't hear Leapfrog's heartbeat. He can't smell him. He can't see him. He's blind.
He doesn't know where he's at. Yeah.
He assumes that he's run off. He says something to the kid, and then he's gone. He doesn't have the missing pieces in the story, right? And I think it's sitting with him and Ben that the kid is able to kind of reveal what really happened, and it's this, like to your point, kind of tragic, heartbreaking moment where Matt is able to be for this kid what nobody really was for him when he lost his dad. A dad that he cared a lot about, but a dad who was definitely on the wrong side of the law and a lot of things as well. But Matt's dad, the boxer. And sometimes muscle for crime lords, really not a great role model either.
No.
Okay, so let's the rest of the volume is really about a power vacuum. The Kingpin is assassinated at the very beginning of the second story arc called Underboss. And he's assassinated by a young up-and-comer who basically convinces a lot of the other guys in the surrounding neighborhoods that they can Julius Caesar him and stab him to death, and then divvy up his territory amongst each other. And that's what they do. And it's all built on the fact that the Kingpin and his team, or his crime crew, knew that Daredevil is Matt Murdock. And this guy, I think it's Silk, right? Is the guy's name, or Silk's? From
the moment you meet, I just want to say, from the moment you meet him, you're like, this guy's going to take out the Kingpin now. No, they're really going to follow this guy. There's no way this is going to work.
It's like he beat up Thanos on the day he didn't have a gauntlet and was really sick from food poisoning, and also had a really nasty, infection of some kind.
I mean, there's no way this guy carries the gravity that this is going to work. Even if they kill Wilson, which they don't, which spoilers, they don't do because he's still around.
He's
Like
still
they
around,
fail.
right?
But like, even if they do
Right.
that, like he was going to hold this territory for about 30 seconds.
Right? Yeah. His reign was not going to last.
No.
So yeah, they stab him, leave him for dead. Obviously, very big mistake. And then use the knowledge that Matt is Daredevil and try to ruin him. And they give this information over to the police because, of course, Silk's guys turn on him, and he's
Vanessa comes in.
Vanessa.
And, like,
yes,
cleans
when
up
Vanessa Fisk finds out, that her son and Wilson and Silk had stabbed her husband, she does exact revenge on both her kid brutally and all these leaders. And Silk escapes enough to get to the cops, and then he uses the bargaining chip of "I know who Daredevil is" to try to get out of this.
Well, and this is why, like, he is such a dude, because he gets in there and they're like, he confesses all this crap he done because he wants protection. And they're like, dude, you're just going to prison. Like,
right?
Why are we going to protect you?
And you're going to tell us the identity of a superhero as a way to get out of this?
Yeah. And so they're like, you want protection? Roll over on your dad, who's a crime lord in like Chicago. Yeah. And they're like, roll over on him, and then okay, we'll talk. And he's like, no, I can't do it. I got information for you. And then he doesn't get a deal. He just goes, Matt Murdock is Daredevil. It's like, so they're just like, yep, still not going to give you a deal. You just gave us the information.
It was an epic fail on his part.
He was just like, dude.
So that information is now floating around among law enforcement as well as several villains, and it underlines kind of what goes on in this story. There's an assassination attempt made on Matt Murdock. A really exciting sort of bombing sequence in front of the courthouse, and a super villain with this intense power that messes up Matt in a big way. Yeah, Matt ends up having to try to chase this guy down, but with a concussion, which is impacting his ability to use his senses the way he's normally using them, which is a great sequence. I love that whole idea that he's suffering from a head injury that's impacting his senses, but those are his ability to like defeat the villain.
The function, yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about how this whole storyline kicks off. What were your thoughts on the state that we find Matt, the Kingpin's murder, which at this point, it's not revealed that he survived until a little bit later in this storyline. Right. But when reading this, how are you feeling about this?
So I think this arc is why I thought this was like a good place to start, because it does it lets you jump in at a major shift in. So like the first arc is like, okay, this is it's kind of like, this is Matt's place in the world, those first 3 issues. And then this is just going back to your perspective of like, was this a good place to tell somebody to start? So you get a little short story. This is kind of Matt's role in the world. And then you jump here, and it's basically like, because I doubt there's very many people that read comics that don't know that Matt the Kingpin or Kingpin's Matt's main villain, and and he's in Hell's Kitchen, and like those basic kind of things.
Right.
So you get to start with, like you said, a power vacuum. Like there's a major shift in Matt's world. The Kingpin is off the board. And then you get, and Matt's identity may be public knowledge.
Right. And the Kingpin had been protecting him in some ways previously. For those that hadn't been reading the previous volumes, a lot of times Kingpin was using that idea of the devil I know is better than the devil I don't. And I can work around Daredevil. I can work around Matt Murdock, and I can get what I need out of this neighborhood. And when that is removed, I think Matt is realizing how shielded he had been by the Kingpin.
So it's just a great, like, it's a really interesting sequence that, like, where Bendis is jumping in. He's jumping in, and he's basically like, okay, these are all the pieces that you would think of like in a Daredevil story. I'm going to knock the pieces over. let's see how it goes. And which is always like can lead to great stories or can be like a mess, like depending on how well the writer handles it. And I think he does a really good job here of, because you get, I think he does a really good job of setting Matt up to be like not sure about the change in the status quo.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't know initially whether Kingpin survived or not. And he just basically doesn't really know. What I think is interesting is like they pull this off. He doesn't, despite being in the neighborhood and everything else, doesn't realize that they've done this initially. And then has no idea that Vanessa then comes in and cleans house.
Right.
So like he sort of is on his heels, like when this all goes down in a way that like Matt has been like, it's a small neighborhood. You talk about like everybody's life's intertwined, and yet they manage all of this without his knowledge, which also goes to a more realistic take on what one guy can do and be and understand, like even with supervillains.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I like that concept, like you said, on his heels. I think that's a big thing that is all through the volume 2 here in most regards. This idea that Matt is down and out. He's playing with cards that he didn't choose, right? He's been dealt a hand that he didn't choose, and it's a lot of sympathy that you have for him as a character, because you feel like he's just trying to do the right thing and doesn't necessarily know what it is or how to do it, and he's stuck with some very sinister people all around him. So this storyline has a basic premise of certain villains start to basically take advantage of the word when it gets out, and then when it's public knowledge. So the second storyline, called Out, it's front page news. One of the FBI agents, because this goes up the chain of command through the law enforcement, this lands in the lap of the FBI because Matt Murdock has a shield file. And why does he have a shield file? So the FBI gets a hold of it, and one of these guys feels honor bound to get this information out, even though the head of the FBI, all the people in his department, tell him, we're going to sit on this. Like, this guy has a shield file. Nick Fury is saying, hands off, like, don't touch.
Yeah.
This guy's like, no, it needs to get out. And he basically delivers.
Well, and he also has personal reasons because he's struggling financially. So like he's looking for payday as much as anything. So there is also that aspect. So he sells the story.
He sells the story, not to the Daily Planet. It's not the Daily Planet. Daily Bugle. Yeah. He sells it to a rival newspaper.
Yeah.
And another one of my favorite covers occurs here on this issue, where it's like Daredevil being outlined on the newspaper, where it says Matt Murdock Daredevil ? Yeah. And now it's published, and the entire city either is in disbelief or completely feels like Matt Murdock is the Daredevil. Yeah. And it's out there for the world.
I mean, it's like anything else that hits the news cycle in our real world. Something hits the news cycle.
Right.
And whether before it's anything, once it hits the news, half the population just believes it.
Right.
Whether there's any like proof or anything else to it, it's just like, nope, this is, of course they must be. And, and then the other half doesn't. But I love so we get this, and we actually get introduced to we get the sequence where the guy's telling the FBI, and the FBI is squashing it, and the guy decides he's going to put it out there. And we get Foggy at the newsstand getting the paper. Yeah. And then we get this great sequence of, we switch to Matt, and he's like, I know before I'm even awake.
Right.
I can hear because of the way his senses work. he knows
the journalists are camped out around his house.
Yeah, he knows. And, it goes to the thing. I can hear them on their cells. I hear the motors of their cameras. I smell the coffee. And even, I can smell their saline solution in their eyes. I know before I wake up that my life is over.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we get this. Foggy comes out and, like, talks to him. And these people come, so we get a great sequence of Matt trying to decide what to do.
Yeah, it's instant damage control because he is forced to have to decide: do I admit to this? Do I lie about it and argue about it? Like, what are the consequences to all the different choices? Foggy knows the truth, and so he's trying to give him a legal perspective of like, look, if you admit to this, your life is going to be trials. It's going to be court dates. It's going to be assault charges. It's going to be you're going to lose your entire career. It's going to be absolute chaos. Meanwhile, his superhero friends who know, guys like Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, they have a very different perspective. Both of those characters live life in the public eye.
Natasha's just like comes in and is like, let's go. Let's fine. Don't worry about it.
And so you have all these differing perspectives on what Matt should do next. And I love those sequences, on top of which you have villains that start just rolling up on his apartment and saying, you ruined my life. I'm going to beat the snot out of you.
Steel Man comes to his office. Like,
yes.
It's like,
for me, there's a drama comedy side to this sequence where you are feeling for Matt in this really difficult situation. But the hilarity of people who are just like, you can see me. You're not really blind. You're faking being blind, and Matt having to walk this fine line, deciding what do I do here?
I love the sequence where he's fighting the guy in the diner, and there's just a customer in there, like he's just saved him from this guy, and the customer's like, oh, hey, Daredevil, what color is my shirt? And then when he leaves, because there's more happening, the guy's like, he didn't answer. Like, confirmation bias.
So I really do enjoy the way Bendis and Maleev play with this situation, because it could be completely dour and depressing, but I think there's a fun interplay going on here a little bit. There's also some great comments. Brendan says that some of this he was hoping would play out in the current run in the TV series, and I do know there is some crossover, and we'll get to White Tiger, who is appearing in the TV series a little bit here. That's a great point. I never thought of him as a Constantine, because Constantine always seems so bitter and so angry, and so like disconnected to the world. And I think Matt always feels so grounded and so compassionate and so loving and not cynical in any way. But it's an interesting comparison as far as just their faith. In both cases, they have a lot of faith, whether it's in the spiritual world like John is connected to, or in Matt's case, it's with this religious background that he has such a strong connection to. But I've never thought about that, Gore. That's an interesting thought.
It is an interesting thought.
Brian is saying this brought him back to Marvel Comics. That's great to hear. And for me, I just stumbled upon it because I had wanted to read more Daredevil and had been a while. And this was what my LCS recommended from Volume 2. And then, of course, I went ham on this all the way through. JSS, thank you for coming by. I appreciate you. I mentioned it earlier, but folks need to check out Cliff's show from tonight when he had Joel the Geek on for Comics Cocktails. It was really, and Cliff Comics and Cocktails, it was very entertaining. The guys were having a blast, and I was in that chat most of the evening. It was very entertaining. And then apparently I left a hot take and then went to go take care of this show and get it going. And it was such a hot take. They actually were calling me live and having me on speakerphone to explain my hot take. So I have a cameo appearance on Cliff's show. Very, very entertaining. So I'm sorry that I left such a hot take. And apparently I need to read the Kurt Busiek JLA Avengers, and it's a crime that I have not. So good to know. So when it comes to the Out storyline, which is really just the beginning of how the power vacuum is impacting Matt's life, I know there's some great cameos. I'm a big Luke Cage, Jessica Jones fan because I like the sort of, I don't want to say trinity that they make, because I do think Spider-Man is the other, corner of that quadrangle or whatever it is. And get out of here, Iron Fist. Nobody needs you. But
he does make an appearance.
But the four of them, as far as like the New York crew, the cameos from them I think are very interesting, and I've always liked the way they interact with Matt and the way they are giving him alternative perspectives, and no any one of them is always right. They always have moments of being right or being wrong. Luke Cage has several, I think, in this volume alone. But I do just like the way they are always supporting and giving advice to one another, How did you feel about how they're using some of these great villain cameos or hero cameos? Did any of them stand out to you?
Like you said, we get like in this initially and out. I love where he's like trying to deny and all this stuff, and Natasha just like walks into his office in disguise
as a blonde,
like, trips down to the Black Widow in his office, and he's like, and I love how she's in her Black Widow suit, and he's like, "Put your clothes on, Natasha," like she's naked. He's like looking down.
And he knows that she's there before everybody else is like, just this woman. Who's this blonde woman?
This blonde woman walking in, and
right, that's a great cameo for sure.
But she doesn't really play a role. But then she sets up the cameo by Elektra that we get later, and Luke is. I would say Luke is more than a cameo.
Okay.
I do love Jessica's role because he basically hires Jessica to be his bodyguard, and she doesn't know the truth.
No, she's the only one of them that doesn't know for sure. Because Matt, I guess the next reveal is that Matt decides he's going to lie, claim he's not Daredevil, that this is a smear campaign, and sue the newspaper to try to redeem himself. Yes. So Jessica is the only one that is not aware.
Yeah.
And she's married to Luke at this point. Yeah. So Luke's keeping it a secret.
Or were they not quite? I don't know.
I thought they were together at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm remembering this a little earlier. And Brendan, hey, if you've got a recommendation that's going to change my mind on Iron Fist, names like Brubaker and Fraction are the right ones to drop.
Those are the right ones. So yeah. But yeah, and then he gets, and I do love that, like, so he decides he's going to fight it. And I love he ends up having dinner with Vanessa. She invites him to dinner, and she basically gives him the FBI agent that told the paper.
Yeah.
And I love the sequence, like, before he comes out to sue, like, when he makes his decision, as we see, he basically just stands in the guy's window, like, in the middle of the night.
Right.
And then the guy's like, "Nope, I'm no longer your source. I'm not going. I'm not a part of
this." Yeah, because Matt's trying to tip the scales of justice a little bit so that this court case gets settled, right? And that the newspaper prints a retraction. That's his ploy. He's going to take the FBI agent off the table, make it so they don't really have a witness, and he does that by intimidation tactics, honestly.
And it leads to a really cool sequence where the lawyers are there, and he's in the room with this guy who owns the paper, and obviously like a billionaire thing. And Matt's ability to cheat as a lawyer in these kinds of situations.
Yeah.
Because like he's talking to the guy, and the guy offers him like a really low settlement, and Matt's like comes back with a huge number. And they go back and forth a couple times, and they get to the guy's like, "We got to the exact number I was willing to go to."
Yeah.
Like Matt used it, and he's like, "You know what?" Screw the guy, but it actually backfires on him because the guy is like, "Screw you."
Yeah, like, it's spectacular how badly it fails.
Yeah, because he cheated to figure out what the exact number was. Like he's listening to his heartbeat and everything else to like figure out the number, and then ultimately the guy kicks the lawyer out, and he's like, because it says you settled for the exact amount I was ready to give you. The exact amount.
Yep.
He's like, "You're conning me, and I won't be conned."
And he's also like, you sitting there with that smile on your face this whole time. He's like, he's so offended by how Matt seems to be taking a little bit too much of an enjoyment in how he's won. and it's the wrong move. It's the hubris, right?
Yeah.
Of it all, the pride.
Yeah, he's like,
in
you can
his
barely keep a straight face.
deception.
He's like,
Yeah. And it comes back to bite him because the newspaper decides to go through with the lawsuit and drag this whole thing out, which continues the drama of not only the power vacuum, but of course the reality of the reveal of his identity.
Yeah.
Anything else from this arc? Should we move on to the next one?
I think we're ready to move on.
Yeah, this was a big one, and obviously it plays out. It's got a lot of impact later on.
Yeah, I mean, it drives the rest of this volume
for sure. So Trial of the Century is the White Tiger storyline. White Tiger being the Hector Ayala version, who in this plot line tries to stop a robbery and it goes really askew. The criminal escapes. The cops show up and think he is the criminal. There's a dead body. There's some theft going on. They arrest him. He needs a lawyer. And in the midst of a trial of Matt dealing with his identity being out there in a trial to prove whether he's not Daredevil, he decides to be a lawyer for Hector and to help try to prove his innocence in a court of law. And the trial is a roller coaster and has a very tumultuous end where Hector loses in court and basically commits gunfire, ends his life by trying to take on the police.
Yeah. So yeah,
what did you think of this one?
And this is where you talk about Luke being right and wrong in this book. This is where Luke is wrong.
Right.
Like, Jennifer is right there. Like, I know that at this time she was a practicing lawyer, like telling other stories. Like, you don't need to go to Matt for this.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
get She-Hulk.
Yeah. I mean, she represents superheroes all the time.
And ultimately Matt's identity becomes like part of the trial, right?
Yeah.
It's in and out of the trial all the way through.
I mean, it's in and out of the trial. The prosecution is clearly using it to try to bias the jury.
Right.
And using it against him. You see the judge like, dude, if I find out that you're lying about this, that you are Daredevil, like, you're head on a stick. I mean, it's,
right.
Matt is, and because he uses it at one point, like Matt calls a bunch of like other heroes to talk about White Tiger and everything. He's like, oh, you didn't call Daredevil. Why not? And he's clearly like,
yeah.
But ultimately it comes down to like, well, Matt fails. Like, you talk about his abilities and stuff, and like when he's listening in on the jury, which again, cheating, but he's listening in. But
by then it's too late. It doesn't really matter. It's like,
it doesn't really matter. And he's like, well, I missed
the play-by-play. Yeah,
this person clearly has a bias, like and it's driving the room. But really, when Hector gets on the stand, he does everything Matt tells him not to do.
Right. And Matt is the kind of person that takes the blame even when it's not his to take. And in this trial, most of the blame falls on Hector for making so many bad choices.
Yeah.
And being unwilling to handle the consequences in any real way. Because they even talk about how they could have done a retrial. They could have done another round to try to find his innocence. But instead, of course, he just he loses it, and it becomes the story that it does. And as I understand it, again, I haven't seen Born Again. Some of this, not in the exact same way, is appearing in the new Born Again storyline, because the Hector Ayala story continues into the second volume of the Omnibus. Just spoilers.
Okay.
His niece, is a character who ends up taking that mantle on later. And I do believe they've cast that actress, and she's in Born Again's later episodes.
Yeah.
So I think some of that, and I know Bendis is a producer or something on this season of Born Again, and I do think some of his plots as a result are coming across. Not in the same way. It's not identical. Things are a little different, but
yeah. It's a different situation. It sounds like it's a different situation, but it is a yeah.
It's just
the whole thing with White Tiger. It's a plot point that they take parts of inspiration from.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, for sure.
And for me, it does feel like this really is just Matt gets to. This kind of serves as, for some of what he does later, a justification of what he does later, and the argument of not to reveal himself because he gets to see it play out how, like, or he thinks he does, how it's going to play out if he ends up in court as Daredevil.
Right. Yeah. This is the warning, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Even though I would guess it probably plays out differently, I think there's some other factors here. I mean, the dead cop is really the factor that they try to like jump on here.
Right.
And
that's what Hector's getting pinned with. Yeah.
Yeah, that Hector's getting pinned with, and it's a different. And you clearly have a prosecutor who's wanting to use this to run, like, for political aspirations, and there's a lot going on here. And and the really tragic part is after it's over, is when Matt finally finds in the trial, one of the kids that was actually responsible comes to the end of the trial, and actually ends up, which will be interesting to see like where that goes from there, but like ends up coming forward and telling the truth too late for Hector.
Absolutely. Yeah. He after everything's kind of said and done, this kid, Matt, finds the kid, threatens the kid, and the kid shows up at the police precinct to confess to the cop's murder. Yeah.
Yeah.
But too late, right? Too late. To your point. Well, then, you ready to move on to the next story?
Yeah, I think so.
The next, 3 are all really intertwined in one way or another, and they have to do with the, Hell's Kitchen really struggling under the power vacuum, and a lot of different people coming in to try to seize that power. We get several different classic villains and some, maybe some lesser new villains coming in to vie for this control. The reveal of the Kingpin still being alive plays out a little bit across the next 2 stories. And Matt, through happenstance, rescues a blind woman who was about to get run over by a car. And the car was being driven by criminals that Matt was chasing. And he swings by, saves her. And they share a little moment where she catches his voice, his scent, and he her.
And touches his face and
And then when she later is with her friends and says she was saved by him, they tell her, hey, his identity is real. You could go to his office, if you're interested in this guy. And she was, maybe having a little bit of a fantasy romance in her mind about the fact that this man rescued her and saved her. Maybe there could be something there. And so she shows up to his office and they're both struggling to be real. Right. Like she doesn't want to blow his identity and explain why she's there completely. He can't reveal who he really is for several reasons. And they begin an odd sort of romance. Her name is Mila. I think you mentioned her earlier. Yeah. And Mila is an interesting foil for the other women Matt's dated because she doesn't have superpowers. She's not, fighting crime or robbing anybody or whatever at this point. She suffers from the same ailment as him and really likes Matt for the core of kind of who he is. Right. And also doesn't at the beginning even really know him beyond the fact that he sacrificed potentially his life to save her, right? He risked his life to save her.
He risked his life to save her, yeah.
And so they begin an odd sort of dating through these next 2 arcs, because it's almost like every time they go out, Matt's either getting assaulted by a villain or arrested by the police.
Yeah, he gets questioned because we see, like, basically this is where, into this vacuum, that we see that the owl has moved into this vacuum.
Yes, with a hot new drug.
Yeah, and it was not a character I knew existed but knew nothing about before this.
Leland Owlsley is he's an odd villain, and and not I mean, he feels like a Batman villain to me.
I mean, he's like
I'd love your take.
Like,
Let me know how you feel
Hatter
about him.
quality of Batman villain, like third tier or fourth tier Batman villain.
No, not an A-list Batman villain
No.
by any stretch.
Like,
no,
like, oh, it's Condiment King showing up
he's
again.
above. I was gonna say I put him in between Two-Face and Condiment King is kind of where I drop Owlsley.
That's a big range, but
it's a big gap. There's a big gap. Yeah. And Owlsley has a drug called mutant growth hormone, which he claims is a drug taken from a mutant that gives you superpowers.
Well, they're claiming it's from Spidey.
Yeah, he claims. Yeah, they claim that
they're literally like
they're scraping the DNA from him, though. Yeah, it's coming from Owlsley.
Yeah, nobody wants that mutation. That whatever power.
Nobody needs this. It's an interesting comment on drugs and Matt's awareness of what's happening in his neighborhood, because this drug is spawning a lot of crime and a lot of problems in the neighborhood that Luke is kind of picking up the pieces for. Luke mentions a few times that he's, this is what the people on the street are dealing with, and Matt's too busy with court cases and pretending not to be Daredevil to be interacting with all this.
Yeah.
And this is where we get some great cameo villains. We get
Stiltman shows up and
what?
Stiltman shows up and comes to his office and is like, I'm out. I want you to know I'm done.
Right. Typhoid Mary comes back.
So the other thing is, meanwhile, the Kingpin is trying to move is back.
Right.
And Mary is a character that I knew another one that I knew of, but had never read anything with Typhoid.
Sure.
Mary. And she is an interesting, where he goes. But basically, she through hypnosis, they've buried the split personality, and she's trying to live a normal life. And the Kingpin comes in and just basically shocks her out of it.
Yeah,
to release Mary, and
they've had a romance off and on over the years, as backstory. And in the Zdarsky run, most recently, that came up again. This idea that Kingpin cares for one of her personalities and doesn't like it when she denies the villainess inside, and always wants to kind of, what's the Al Pacino? Yeah, they bring me back, they pull me back in, like that. He's always pulling her back in.
Yeah. So we get her, and we get basically, so we get this whole sequence where Matt and Luke, ends up being Luke and Jessica, and then eventually Matt end up fighting her, and then it leads to a showdown with Bullseye. Makes an appearance.
I was gonna say the biggest cameo is probably Bullseye, right? Yeah. And buddy, you absolutely need to get in on some of this, Rod. Absolutely. You better pull up the panties, buddy. You're gonna get called in.
Future Daredevil reads for sure.
Yeah, you get ready for more of this. We're gonna make you really get in your reading, my man.
Yeah. And the Bullseye, of course, does what Bullseye does. He doesn't really go for Matt. He goes immediately for Mila. He's like, "Oh, Matt's got a woman. I'm going to kill her."
Which has been his MO, right? We've seen the classic.
Apparently, he's killed Karen finally, which is like
I've got some of the death of Elektra stuff going on behind me here. Yeah.
And so Matt ends up stopping him, and they end up in a fight in the street, and Matt reveals that I know who you are now. Finally, they both now know everything about each other, and ends up turning him over to the FBI. So he's turned, they've turned Mary over, they've turned Bullseye over, and it leads to basically. But all of this is happening just because the Kingpin is trying to keep him distracted while he reconsolidates power.
Yeah.
And
because he's furious with anybody that helped his wife kill his son and then sell off.
Dismantle. Yeah. He sold everything off.
And I think once he's recovered physically, he's deciding this is unacceptable. I won't blame my wife because I can't stand to lose her, but I'm gonna get things back to the way they were.
Yeah. And it leads to a showdown between Matt and the Kingpin. One of like the 37th time, you know,
right?
They have a big throwdown.
Yes,
and it ends with Matt basically declaring, like, driving the Kingpin into a bar where all the thugs hang out.
Yeah,
with the Kingpin
because
on the car.
There's always one of those.
Yeah, you know, and basically declaring, "I'm the captain now." I mean, it's basically, "I'm the captain now."
And for me, it's one of my favorite sequences. I could understand people not liking it and being frustrated by it, but I love the intensity of it, because at this point we've had the buildup has been his life is being threatened, his livelihood is being threatened, his loved ones are being threatened, and every time he turns around to try to do the right thing, another henchman shows up, another villain shows up, somebody else's, you really see Matt come to his breaking point. And I think it's nicely built up to this moment where he just basically says, I own this city now. You want to do what you want to do around here, you're going to have to go through me, or I'm going to go through you. And there is no other way to do this anymore. He's not becoming a murderer. He's not becoming the Punisher, but he is laying down his law and then going out every night I think they said for like a month, he went out every night, and anybody doing anything, he was, what's the line in Avengers? You turn them away or you turn them to ash. And that's basically where he went. And he forced everybody out of Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah. You see the next issue, we get a jump. Like we get a time jump
a year later.
Moment, and we see Ben narrating to someone what he understands happened. So every night for weeks, it just says for weeks here.
Okay.
A streak of unparalleled violence struck the shadows of the city. They say Matt Murdock disappeared. It was just Daredevil. He was everywhere, fist flying, blood splattered. He cleaned every nook, every cranny, every corner, every nook, and every cranny. And as quickly as it started, it ended. Like, he just spent weeks until he beat him out of the kitchen.
And I don't want to skip over the two previous volumes if there's stuff you want to go back and mention.
I feel like we kind of covered the big scope, because it was really, the start of it was, there was the Owlsley storyline, which was the mutant growth hormone, and Matt having to take him down because Owlsley kind of tried to take over the Kingpin's territory. And Vanessa and it off in pieces.
Yeah, and there's stuff in there where Owlsley's trying to catch him, admitting everybody's trying to catch him admitting.
Well, the lawyers are basically like trying to catch him, Matt breaking the law, so they can basically.
Everybody's like recording him. There's microphones.
They're recording him, trying to prove that he's Daredevil, and basically trying to use that to get him to leave him alone. Like basically, like, oh, we're gonna if you keep bothering us, we're gonna catch you and make it where you can't deny anymore.
Right.
And, so that's the whole angle. But eventually, Matt uses the FBI to get the better of that. Basically, he sends the FBI in, and then he just comes in and cleans up when the housing starts to get away.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
which leads to the time jump. Is there anything you want to do before the time jump, or do you want to jump to that last volume?
I'm okay with jumping to the last part of this, unless there's something else here. Because we covered the Mary stuff a little bit. Mary and Bullseye and Owlsley, all three of them in this, really are just the progression of testing Matt and pushing Matt until he gets back to the showdown with the Kingpin.
Totally.
And it's the build up to the moment that I don't know.
Each one of them is a little more serious and a little more dangerous than the last.
Yeah. I guess if you want to talk about like Mary's outfit or something, if you'd like.
I'm always happy to talk about that. That's a wonderful topic.
She clearly doesn't, there might be wardrobe malfunction pretty easily with that particular outfit.
Right. It's an update to her costume for sure.
And the other thing that's building during this is the relationship with Mila. And it's basically this, which is very she keeps coming back, even though they go out on their first date and the cops show up because the guy that Matt's suing that's in charge of the paper is dead, which appears to be Owsley did, and like ultimately it comes down to Owsley did it, but like, and then there's to try to like distract Matt and keep him away from his business, and then obviously ultimately there's and then the next time they're going out and Jessica's walking with him, Mary shows up and sets Matt on fire. And, and then Bullseye comes into into Matt's apartment and tries to kill her.
And then Matt has to like come in the skylight and take him out and fight him in the middle of the street.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
No, it's a really good point, because I think the final volume is pointing out why Mila and Matt don't necessarily work long term.
Right.
And I think, the psychology of Matt and the psychology of Mila is a big piece in this final volume called The King of Hell's Kitchen, where we see the results and the consequences of Matt's decision to claim himself the kingpin of Hell's Kitchen, and both from all sides, from the side of Matt Murdock, the human, the citizen, the lawyer, from Daredevil, the kingpin, Daredevil, the superhero, Matt, we learn husband. We see all of the ways in which this is working or not working, and it's not really easy to declare his decision to become the kingpin as a win or a loss.
Yeah.
There are definitely
the cover that you talked about. Like,
I love this cover.
Yeah.
This is just a masterpiece.
Yeah.
That is just freaking gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting scene early on in the storyline that I think I mentioned to you when we were on the phone, where Luke Cage, Peter Parker, Doctor Strange, and I think it's Danny Rand. Oh, is it Reed Richards?
It's Reed. Yeah.
They all show up to have a conversation with Matt and try to like talk sense into him. And instead, Matt holds court and explains how, look, if your portion of New York sucks, that's your problem. Do what I did and nobody will have any crime. And they're all left kind of dumbfounded that they can't, these geniuses, these Marvel Comics gods in some cases, can't speak sense to the lawyer. They get lawyered in Central Park.
He lawyers them completely. I mean, and they're like, but you didn't get rid of it. You just pushed it elsewhere. Like you didn't actually fix any problems other than for the little corner.
No, he didn't sweep up the mess. He put it under the neighbor's rug.
Yeah. he basically walked through the yard and threw all the trash over the fence into the neighbor's yard. And just
and of course, this is when this volume, of course, like anything in Matt's life, this is when everything crumbles and falls apart. His marriage, the woman, the person that Ben Urich was talking to that you were mentioning was Mila.
Yeah.
And Mila admits that she's married to Matt, and they have been married for a while in secret, and that he has disappeared, and she doesn't know where he is, and Ben doesn't know where he is, and Ben is on the trail to try to find him. It turns out that things have gone a bit askew in his taking over of Hell's Kitchen, and he's been seriously injured, and he's in the care of the night nurse.
Yes.
Yeah. Who is in the television show, if you're watching the show, obviously an important part of the television series.
Is she in the show again? She was in the original series.
The original, I don't know if she's in the Born Again, but Rosario Dawson plays the night nurse character, who in this has like a full clinic where she's caring for superheroes, as she does if you've read Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Danny Rand, Iron Fist.
She's been around for a long time. She's
a great classic Marvel character who gets a kind of cool facility in this storyline where she's caring for Matt.
Yeah. So, but basically what has happened is Matt has cleaned everybody out, but because basically through fear of all the people that know him.
Yeah.
But people from the outside that don't know Daredevil just see, oh, here's an opportunity. And the Yakuza
sure.
come in, and they basically using because despite the fact that they say that he ultimately won the court case, and during this time we miss that they win the court case, they get a bunch of money that they donate to clean up Hell's Kitchen to help match efforts. But the knowledge is still out there. There are people that are going to believe that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, no matter what you tell them or what the court case found.
Right.
And
to your point earlier about believing what you read in the news, right?
Yeah.
Some people believed it when it was published. Some people believe it when it was retracted. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he proved that he won the lawsuit. Doesn't matter. Yeah. And they basically ambush Matt Murdock with 100 guys. They're just like, we're just go in and kill him.
And he's left with the choice of like, do I go full out and fight these guys as Matt Murdock, which could potentially reveal the truth about me, or do I have to play this a certain way? Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And he basically goes all out and just fights him as Matt Murdock.
Right. And then later has to go back to some of those same superhero friends and admit his mistake, and then invite them to help him put everything with the Yakuza to rights. So you get a great sequence with Luke and
which is the cover, the hardcover.
Oh, is it?
Has a panel with him and Spidey.
Yes.
And then you can see Luke down here.
There's Luke and Iron Fist.
Iron Fist, I think, is like in the.
He's right where your thumb was. If you flip it back around.
He's down there.
He's in that corner. Yeah.
So this panel is basically become the hardcover cover, and then of course there's Maleev art on the
and I will say the banter with Peter, Danny, Luke, and Matt is generally some of my favorite like comedy stuff. They use Peter Parker's Spider-Man really well. A lot of the moments where he's like
this panel in the book. There you go.
There it is. Let me blow that up. I can blow that up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is a spread page that they use for that.
So cover. Good. When they're basically just taking on the Yakuza.
Well, I love they show up at the Yakuza's club, and it's like almost like, and the guy's like, "We almost had him," and then Matt like knocked down a wall, and they're like, "Almost doesn't count," and then Spidey's like, "Actually, I'm just here to use the bathroom."
Yeah,
like Pete can't help himself.
No. He's like, wait, at one point he's like, wait, I was gonna take a break. I thought we were done with all these guys. There's lots of little Peter Parkerisms all the way through this that are a lot of fun.
I love how they're all like staring at them, and Pete's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You just can't stand the silence of the initial, like everybody's staring each other down.
No.
And it's just
yeah.
And
so
Matt
there's a lot of fun.
Speech, and he has to chime in like, you're good at this.
For sure.
Like he just can't.
So the big, I guess, like anything in Matt Murdock's life, he can't have a good thing without something falling apart. And this is what ultimately seems to be the downfall of his relationship with Mila, which is the other side of this, where he is struggling to realize that the death of Karen Page, which happened earlier before this,
which is the part that's in like the Kevin Smith part,
right. He is still recovering. He's in trauma from that, and the way he's acting out as Daredevil, the way he's dealing with things as a lawyer, and potentially, as Mila asks, his marriage, the decision to get married and be in this relationship, all may have been influenced in one way or another by the trauma that he's in. And I love that Matt can't answer this because he doesn't know. He's like, I don't, and the fact that he can't answer it definitively gives Mila more than she wants, and so she decides that she's gonna leave him at the end of this, because she just feels like, she doesn't want someone who is not fully invested in that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, she asked him, and she's like, she tells him, she's like, Foggy told me, Mr. Your Exterior, that maybe you had a nervous breakdown, that you never got over this death of this Karen Page person. He's like, I know the theory. She's like, is it true? And he's like, I don't know. Do you think it's true? And he's like, it might be. And she's like, is that why you married me? He's like, no.
Yeah.
It's part of our marriage. Is our marriage part of this nervous breakdown? He's like, I don't know. And He's like, I just need some time. And she's like, and she just is like, no, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what you vowed to me. That's what a marriage is. It's a promise. This isn't what I wanted. And she leaves him is basically the end of this
omnibus. Yeah.
Which is half of the Bendis run.
Yeah. And we obviously did not see the year of wine and roses that was the happy time. We got the meet cute, and then we got the breakup at the end. And we're left to kind of, which I love, that we're left to kind of like piece together what might have been the happier moments that they shared.
They can't show Daredevil being happy. That's not Daredevil.
There it is.
What's that?
That's how he's different. That's one of the only ways he's different from Nightwing.
Well, when it comes to relationships, I guess
they both do really, really well.
Oh, I love the line in here, like when she comes to visit him in the office and he's talking to Foggy.
Yep.
And
that's one of my favorites.
He's like, she smells really good. And Foggy's like, dude, like, how is this possible?
And he asks, how does she look? And Foggy's like, you always find the best looking women, which they basically used in the show. The first season of the show, Foggy says something very similar with Matt, that somehow always he finds the gorgeous women.
Yeah. I love it because it's just like, and like she leaves and and Foggy walks in after she leaves and he's like, wow. And she's like, Foggy's like, no. He's like, okay, but wow, no. He's like, Jessica, can you do a background check? Sure. It's like, I'm running a check. You suck. I'm like, I'm back and forth through this whole thing. What is she going to do, Foggy? Out me to the tabloid. She's like, oh, you know why this is a terrible idea. And he's like, how does she look? I'm not telling you. She smells great. How is it that blind as you are, every one of your girlfriends ends up looking like a European supermodel?
There it is. Right? Yeah. It's so fantastic. And true to Foggy's relationship with Matt, and true to Matt's, I don't want to say philandering, but his wandering eyes, I guess you could say. Because he's always very faithful, but he tends to be with to Ghetto Head's point, definitely a player.
That's a player, yeah. Matt's gotten around,
right?
And the women are like, I mean, when you look at Natasha and Elektra and Karen was always considered very
Karen, and for sure, no ugly Bettys in the lot.
There's no
shame to America Ferrera, but
So
I get any thoughts on that storyline? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, any last thoughts on that storyline, the way that kind of wraps up
I think it's good. It makes me look forward to see where this is going. Like I said, Mila was not a character I knew existed before this.
Sure.
So I don't know anything about her going in. Which makes me wonder if we're gonna end up with another like sigh in the chest at some point or something. But just because Bullseye didn't get the job done the first time doesn't
mean something to be worried about always. Always worry about those flying cards and things.
Or his match, stick or whatever, something bad's gonna happen, but we'll see. I will say the one relationship we didn't talk about very much was the Matt and Foggy relationship. Is early on, Foggy is the one that is pushing super hard for him to deny, but also to stop being Daredevil. Like, you have to deny and then you have to stop. This is your chance to get out. And it's really Foggy's chance to get out. Like, in a lot of ways, the way he's actually thinking about it, like there's some argument there that's real. And Natasha calls him out on it. Like, but this is more about you wanting him to be done than you thinking he needs to be done.
Right.
We later get a great conversation where Foggy kind of owns up to that. He's like, I still think it's the right thing for you to have denied, but he owns up to the fact that it was as much about him when he was telling me he needed to stop being Daredevil as it was about Matt.
100%.
And then we get some great moments of, the two of them when they're talking about Mila and Matt also, like I say, that Foggy did a bad, like was kind of a bad friend there at the beginning for part of it, but then Matt does way worse stuff that Foggy's like, and Foggy just sticks through with. He's just like through thick and thin,
right? And I think the counterpoint to that is this comment Brendan made about Matt and Luke, and there's conversations where Luke is holding Matt accountable for lying. Luke is very much on the side of saying, I've got superpowers. I live an honest life. I'm out there. He's not willing to understand the implications that it would have on Matt's career and Matt's other parts of his life.
Well,
but I think it's the counterpoint to what Foggy is saying. Foggy is saying lie and quit being a superhero, and Luke is saying like strut, like own that shit. You're a superhero. Stop lying. Be a member of this community in full view and daylight, and that's who you should be, like I'm doing.
Yeah.
Be a hero for hire. People will buy you.
And like Luke plays very much, like Luke and Foggy are kind of the two little like on Matt's shoulders throughout this volume.
Definitely.
Like,
and neither of them is 100% right. Neither of them is 100%
consistently, like repeatedly to be, and whether or not which one is actually the right influence at any given moment is not. They're both right and wrong at different times, depending on the
100%. Yes, exactly.
And so, but Luke kind of plays that role of the the other side of all the arguments. And
totally.
And I love the moment, like they have their little intervention with him in the park and it goes wrong, but then when it all goes to shit, like they tell him it's going to at some point.
Yeah.
When he goes back to Luke and basically says, I was wrong. It looks like, okay, we're good. Like, I just needed to hear you say it. It's like, there's no like holding you accountable. There's no
mea culpa.
Like, he's like, we're here. Let's go. He
doesn't have to do any Hail Marys or anything.
No, it's like, I'm willing to roll with you. I just needed you to be honest with yourself about what was happening. And
totally.
The other relationship that I wanted to touch on is the Ben Urich relationship.
Yeah, because Ben's a big part all the way through for sure.
Ben's a big part, particularly at the beginning and then at the end. Because Matt actually when the news gets out, we get the great moment of Ben basically telling Jonah, "Well, I've always known, and it's not Matt."
And Peter Parker rolling in and saying the exact same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Where they're both like, we both know who Daredevil is. It's not Matt Murdock, and we're not going to tell you no matter what you do to us. And Jay Jonah's like, well, you're fired. And Parker's like, well, I don't work here anymore anyways. I just came
it's like, I already don't work here.
And Ben Urich's like, you didn't tell me I'm fired. And he's like, well, get out of my office, because he knows he can't fire Ben because he needs Ben.
But Matt basically says, and he explains it at the end when Ben helps him at the end. And it's like, because Matt basically cuts him off. He's like, we can't do this anymore. I'm not going to put you in a position to continue to lie for me. I'm making the decision I'm going to make tomorrow. Like, he cuts him off. And it's really because, like as we read through this, how much he respects him and how much Ben respects Matt, even though he also knows Matt makes mistakes, and they're both
right.
And Mila goes, when it comes time, like when the worst happens, Matt had told Mila during this year, even though he wasn't talking to Ben anymore, if the worst happens, go to Ben. Like, not Pete, not Luke, not Foggy.
No.
Go to Ben Urich.
And
it's, so there's the interesting dynamic of those two characters and how much respect they have for each other and how much, Matt has protected Ben and Ben protects Matt more than Matt does protect, Ben has protected Matt for all these years. And
I think they both really value the truth. They both really value Hell's Kitchen. They both really care about what's going on a real level, not on the superficial level. And I think in that way, Ben and Matt have an alignment in their philosophies and their views of the world. What's up, Tony? Aren't you on Jig's Kingdom?
Right this second.
Yeah. We're done. We're out of here. It's been great. No,
I do want to like to that front, and I do love when Jonah like questions Ben, like, you've known it, you didn't make the sneaks. He's like, I've gotten you so many other stories by knowing this and not burning this information,
right,
that you would not have gotten otherwise. He's like,
the source is more valuable than the reveal.
Than the reveal, yes. And which Jonah doesn't really have a response to, which is why he tells him just to get out.
Yeah, exactly. Because he knows the truth, right?
I don't have one of John's shirts. I need to buy a John shirt. I know.
I'm due for a rebrand, and then I'll send him a shirt.
Yeah, I need it. I don't even have one of my own shirts, so there you go.
I got two.
I know.
I might have.
I'm gonna order one, and then I just never get it done.
Well, let's wrap things up. I've been waiting to ask this question. It seems like how do you feel about this omnibus, this purchase? Now you've tried your first foray into the universe of Daredevil. Give me some grades, some overall thoughts on the whole thing.
I enjoyed it a lot. Grades are always hard. I am a.
Is this where I'm like, it's the greatest ever, and you're like, it's good, it's really good. I'm sorry, Whitewell Comics.
Well,
we're not friends anymore.
I am a. Do you want me to grade it like you guys grade like comic book grading, or typically, or just a regular like?
If you've got letter grades or CGC, whatever you're comfortable with, how would you how are you feeling about this reading this volume?
So, in terms of like, did it pique my interest and make me want to read more Daredevil? Absolutely. Like, it made me like, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I enjoyed the character. Like, I knew about the world, and I figured I would enjoy Daredevil as a character and as a read, and I did. Like the art, the writing, Matt's voice in this, all of it is really, really good. I would say, like, I'm a weird grader because I have a tendency to clump everything like, oh, it's good. So everything gets like a certain floor, and then like, but I don't really give anything like 10 out of 10. Like I almost never give something that, like, just because, because then it has to be perfect, and nothing's perfect. So it's like, so I'm a weird 9 only one grade, best grade. Use your rating.
You have your own. Yeah, is this a dumpster fire? Like, is this a straight cash homie?
Oh yeah, I think this is. I would recommend. Like, I would recommend. Like if somebody is new. If you're a Daredevil fan already, obviously you've probably read this. But if not, this is definitely worth your time, I would think. And as a new reader, I think it's a pretty good jumping on point if you have like some basic background on the character to jump in, because it is a big like I said, Bendis knocks all the pieces over, and then you get to like see him kind of come back onto the board here. I don't know, like I think I wrote down, like, I have all my books this year, and I gave it an 8.5 of 8, like,
that's a very good grade from you. Like, that's a very good grade.
And so, which I think I've given, like, that counts like novels and this kind of stuff and everything I've read this year. I have one thing that got a 9.5, one thing that got a 9, and one other thing that got an 8.5, and I'm giving this an 8.5. So that's, and that's out of 12 things that I've read and finished this year.
All right. Well, I feel good about that.
Graphic novels and that kind of stuff. So
sure. And I'm obviously a big fan, Eric. I'm speaking specifically to Eric here in the chat, who clearly is a big fan. I've probably read this about as many times as any ongoing Marvel series, meaning I've probably picked up these issues and read them now probably 4 or 5 times. It's been one of those things. Even when I wanted to read the Brubaker, I felt like, well, I need to at least skim read the Bendis and get back into the brain space again. Yeah. And then when I tried to get into the Mark Waid, it was the same thing. Well, now I got to read the whole thing and go. And so I've gone back time and again to this, and it's been one of those touchstones for me, especially from the Marvel side. This ranks incredibly high for me, and one of those few books that I would happily put with, Claremont's X-Men or what have you, where it's like it's something that means so much to me that I've gone and put effort into collecting the issues. I think Jason Aaron's Thor is next to this on the shelf for me, and I have the same respect for it. I can't separate it. It's hard for me to separate it from Brubaker. It's hard for me to separate it from David Mack and those other great arcs that are part of volume 2.
Part of this whole volume 2, yeah.
But I will legitimately say, shut up, Tony, that
don't listen to him. He's just.
I let JP talk a ton. You gotta watch the show. Jeez. But no, I'll legitimately say this is something that I think is worthy of owning the single issues, owning the trades, rereading and revisiting. It's just something that stands up and is something that I continue to go back to. So I can't recommend it enough. And I'm happy if you ever get the second omnibus, I'm happy to do this again.
It'll probably be at my next order of like trades and omnis and stuff. It'll be in there. I ordered the first one. I haven't made another order since.
Sure.
So yeah, it'll be in my next trade, because I do want to continue to read this. I probably at some point I'll probably order it, and then at some point I'm probably going to try to get the Kevin Smith and the Mac just to like read those stories as well, just to like kind of fill this out. But
before we when we're backstage, I'll go and grab the hardcover I bought from David Mack that had a lot, and I'll see if it has all his issues in it in one little volume, because that might be a good one to pick up. I got it at his booth in San Diego. I'm going to put this up because fuck you, Tony. That's the only word in the English language I need for you, buddy. So awesome. Thanks. A huge thank you, obviously, to the chat for hanging out with us tonight, for dropping some comments. I know on a Friday night, there's a ton of things you could be doing, but talking Daredevil is just one way to spend your evening. And I've been looking forward to this all week. The Omni X-Men show is a lot of fun. Dr. Doom with Stu is a lot of fun, but I've been, I think I mentioned to you, JP, but certainly I mentioned it to other people I've been talking to all week, that rereading this really lit a fire of joy in me, as far as it's just one of those things that I'm always happy to go back to and revisit in some way. So this was really fulfilling.
We'll probably get to this, in a couple months. We'll probably have to come back to volume 2. So,
I will
Omnibus volume 2. So for sure.
And I will say the first arc in volume 2 is called Widow, and has all the sexy Black Widow covers you could ever want.
Oh yeah.
Maleev unloads. Some of them are downright mildly pornographic. It's like, come on, like you don't need her to be in that pose.
No, need is,
Yeah, need is the word. I mean, want, obviously, but yeah. So that should be forthcoming. And I'm happy to do more.
And it does have all of the Maleev covers on the back of the.
Yeah, I mean, so freaking great, man.
Well, yeah,
so
the Mac stuff, all the covers to everything, but yeah, there's some truly fantastic,
really great. Yeah,
this was when I did the little Daredevil Let's Collect thing, like picking a Maleev cover to do. Like I ended up picking the one that like you used for the thumbnail with him sitting on the throne, because it's so good. But like, I'm so mad at myself because it meant I left out all of these others. Which is like, oh, I could have just done 10 Maleev covers, and like,
Well, and you'll start this next volume with like, oh, that's the best Black Widow cover, and then you'll flip to the next one. No, that's the best. Well, no, and then you'll flip. Oh, no, that's the best one. Yeah. I'm watching you, dude. You're really walking a fine line. You better be jumping on to Jigs.
Fired up tonight. I don't know.
Jigs is live. If you're laying in bed and not drinking and sitting on Jigs' show, I don't know what you're doing tonight, Tony.
Yeah, he probably is. He's drinking for sure. He's definitely been drinking. So.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of great Omnibus content made this week that you can check out on the channel. JP's got his big video of the week dropping tomorrow morning around the same time I'm usually going live. So lots of good things from the two of us tomorrow morning. And then hopefully, as JP mentioned, another Daredevil Omnibus discussion to be coming along the way here soon.
You and I will be talking a different omnibus next week on Tuesday, which I've almost read. We're doing volume 7 and 8, which is in this giant 100 bullets omnibus.
Yep.
So we'll be talking that on Tuesday on my channel. And then
it's funny because I'm talking that omnibus on your channel, and then I'm still talking with No Good Comics on Wednesday. Though we're talking Black Panther.
yeah, you guys switch nights for some reason. Well, on Wednesday I'll be talking Fear Agent.
Ooh, there it is.
Remender crew of Unruly and Bearded. So we're talking that on Wednesday. So
that's one of the few Remenders I haven't read. So I'm looking forward to reading it and then catching the rewind on your shows. Okay, so that's it, gang. You can catch us tomorrow on his channel. He's doing his edited content, and then I'm going live tomorrow morning. So catch us then, and then hopefully more Daredevil soon enough.
Yeah.
Thanks, gang.